You are now live.
That's okay. That's okay. Hi, everybody. I'm really glad you're here, especially this little guy. We're really.
You are now live.
That's okay. That's okay. Hi, everybody. I'm really glad you're here, especially this little guy. We're really, really lucky to be here tonight. I'm really glad to be here at Hatch in this really incredible space with these really incredible people, and have you here. And what I really want for tonight, since it is such an intimate space with a number of people here, is to really have a dialogue and like really feel that story you came in telling. This is the place to do that. We want to answer questions. We want to provide tips and practical ways to transition into the back to workspace. But we have a whole lot of plan, but this is also meant to be a dialogue. I also am really excited to share that Lilu launched officially this week. And so I want to send huge congratulations to them and all the work they did for this event and all the work they're doing in general. The subtext I feel like in this world is everyone is saying the same thing, which is I need more support. And so however that shows up, whether I need to feel seen, I need to feel heard, I need to be given the right directions. And so when you come across a product that can do that, even inadvertently, it's something that everyone should just champion and salute. So congratulations, you guys. This is a really big deal, and we're really happy to partner with them tonight. I am Jessica Vanderberg. I am the co-founder of Momtown. Momtown is a preconception through postpartum care project with a focus on perinatal mental health. There is a lot of reasons that I went into this work, but primarily I'm a mother of 3, and I've also returned to 3 different workspaces after that, each baby, in very different places. And so I have a lot of experience about what that transition feels like and how to navigate it from a really corporate space to a really creative space and to a really a different nonprofit sort of government-based space. I'm also here representing Afterthird, which we partnered, Afterthird and we partnered tonight with Not Safe for Mom Group to talk about this topic of transitioning back to work in a healthy way. And we have Simone here too, who is one of our featured providers on Afterthird. Afterthird, again, it's one of those, I lobbied for the job at Afterthird. I'm on the executive team there. We are a virtual and in-person service that pairs pregnant people through postpartum with the right providers in that journey. So, it's got an ecosystem of providers for different purposes. And there's some information on the chair if you want to take it with you. But from sleep consultants to postpartum doulas to back to work coaches, there's just a wide variety of support there for you to explore. And to me, postpartum time period is a really underserved time period. And so by being part of the executive team, I find the need for advocacy in that time and to elevate that topic real forefront. So again, we're really excited to be here tonight with Alexis. And Alexis runs by far, in a way, my favorite mom community building group called Not Safe for Mom Group. She founded Not Safe for Mom Group in 2018 after she wrote a piece for Pretty Woman parenting, online parenting magazine, that was taken down for being too controversial. And everything I know about her, I'm glad that happened because it was sort of the impetus to build her online space, which is a space that provides anonymously or non-anonymously to share sort of the deep dark stuff that you really, really, really have to put out somewhere, but might not always be received the best way. And so while I'm not a really active member of that community, I'm constantly looking at it to see what people are saying, because it's like, it's such a sense of relief to know that there's such a wide variety of parenting topics that come up, from, you know, sex after baby to medication and nursing and trauma, all the things, and Alexis will talk a bit more about the community in a minute, but I just want to say to her, standing here, that I'm so grateful for that space, and that, like, having you here is really important.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah. And then Simone is, like I mentioned before, an Afterthird provider, and also like in a really, really, really dig her heels in doula in the New York community as well. She's a doula trainer with her own certified organization, Doula Trainings International, and a mentor. It's where I certified, and I feel so grateful for you. And she's here representing sort of the lactation counselor community to answer any questions you have about pumping in the return to workspace. Also, really, really important to mention that she runs and supports a lot of lactation groups around the city. I've attended her Leche International group in Bed-Stuy, right? And while I went to observe, I ended up walking away with a whole bunch of information I didn't know I needed to know. And I think if you can find her on a day that works, Leche is an incredible organization as a resource, and Simone is as well. So thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think, you know, we had an idea of what we wanted to say, and there's so many statistics about going back to work, and this topic is so huge. But a couple things I want to plant the seed with, and then we'll kind of have a sense of where everybody is, and I can get a sense of where, you know, you're expecting, and you just had your baby. And if you want to share where you are in this journey, please do, because one of the things I hope we walk away with tonight is just this idea that obviously anything can happen, but you can also plan for certain things. And that preparation will really, really secure a smoother transition. And so I guess my first question is, who is returning? Who's planning on returning to work? Yeah. And have any of you done that transition with a baby before this? Okay.
I went back on Monday.
You went back on Monday?
Or last Monday, so I'm like a week and a half back.
Amazing.
Yeah.
How are you feeling?
Depends on when you catch me.
Yeah. And did you jump right in? Or
So I am the dean of a middle school at an independent school in the city, so I went back kind of at the end of the summer. So last week was just administrators, and then this week faculty came back full day today. So I'm back kind of, last week was kind of like 9 to 3 full time, and now it's like really happening.
Okay.
So.
And how old is your little one to remind her?
She is 4 months old.
4 months. Okay.
Oh, congratulations. Yeah. And so being here tonight is kind of a big deal too.
Yeah, I'm like weepy about it because this is now like the longest.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, I don't want to go because I want to play with my baby. But I should go because that's the whole point of the event is to take care of yourself. But I like went through this whole thing. I was like, maybe I won't go. I'm not going to go. I was like, no, I'm going to go.
I'm glad that you bring that up because I think one of the tools that makes transitioning back to work a little bit easier is like finding those things that remind you of who you are. And if like going out after work, you know, maybe it looks different, but you have the space, you know, find those spaces that feel really supportive of this. And like being autonomous is okay. Like being told that like, yeah, I totally got this. Yeah. This is like a little bit of me time. Yeah. So I'm really glad you're here.
Thanks. Yeah. That's good.
It does feel good, right?
Yeah.
You're like, I'm going to come.
Right, and I came to an event a couple of weeks ago, and I had her, because like my husband couldn't watch her or whatever, so it was like, now it's like, oh, it's weird. I just like got on the subway, and it was like, oh, it's a lot easier to do this without the baby.
Actually participate and be like,
yeah, and I'm not like breastfeeding.
Yeah.
On the live stream, like it was a whole thing.
That's cool. You gotta normalize it, right? Like that's the whole thing. And so your industry is kind of kid focused. Do you feel like you have a supportive space to do the things you need to do for yourself, like as far as pumping or nursing?
It's tricky. I'm the person that the kids get sent to when they're in trouble. So it's a little bit, like I'm the principal. So when the kids get in trouble, they come to me. So that's a little tricky. I'm pumping in I have my own office and I'm pumping in there. So I created like a laminated sign that says like, Mrs. Marsh will be available at blank. Because if the kids come and I'm almost done, then great, they can come in. But if I'm just started, then I don't want them to miss 20 minutes of class. So that's tricky. So we'll see when the kids come back how that goes. The custodians do not understand. They're like doing a lot of knocking. Like, I need to come in and go in your classes. So like that's tricky.
What do they need to go do?
I have because I have like supplies in like my closet, and I keep being like, this is not. And I'm like, not now, guys, things, So I have to like somehow explain to them what a breast pump is, and like, I don't know. So, but I have a little fridge, and it's figuring out like today during orientation, I believe 2 meetings, be like, gotta go pump everybody. So I just like walked out of the full faculty meeting. So it's tricky, but
that's a really good point. We were having a conversation before we came here that like it's so hard to advocate for yourself, but like I feel very proud of you because it takes a long time to learn that skill to say this is an essential thing, or the balance between like, okay, I can kind of give this up right now and I can do it later, and what does that mean and how do I reconcile that? But like finding that voice within this new space is it can be really challenging.
Right. And you're just like talking about your boobs a lot. Like I feel like I'm just like always talking about my boobs with like, you know what I mean? Like and like today at the faculty meeting, I like had to make this presentation, and then I was like, all right, I'm going to talk, and then I have to leave, and I was like, do I tell everyone that by the way this is happening, and do I like make an announcement in front of 120 adults like, by the way, this is what I'm doing. So it's kind of bizarre. It's just like a lot of boob talk in my life, which is normal for me, but then I realized that not the most normal for everybody. Right, and that's all I talk about. Like, I don't care, but it's.
So what did you decide to do? Did you say?
So I just left and was like, I'm not gonna. There's a lot of new people, so it's like, this is this. I also don't want it to be like my defining thing that I'm the one who just came back and I'm the one who has to go to nurse. Like, that will be the only thing the faculty remembers about me is, like, the boob lady.
But I do think you pose a good point of, like, when we do go back to work, it feels like you have to shoot 100% our commitment to breastfeeding our child and 100% back to work and what we do in that role. And it's like, how do we balance? It's always a question of how do we balance,
Right.
So.
And how did you decide that you were gonna? Did you make a decision about your company? And that's what I want someone to talk about, like what the work that she does, because I know that she supports a lot of her clients in this transition back to work. So I'd love to hear from you. Like, did you have a doula that helped you figure out the plan for pumping? Was it something do you have a plan or an expectation?
So I actually ended up having a lactation consultant come the week before I went back to work, which was helpful, just to kind of figure out when to pump and all of that. So I highly recommend doing that because it just made me, because I also didn't know how much she was eating. I was like, I don't even know how much to give her in a bottle. And she's huge. So it was like, you need to give her, she's getting like 7 ounces. I'm like, I don't even have a 7-ounce bottle. So I had to, order a 7-ounce bottle and, figure
When
out.
she nurses from me, she does 7 ounces?
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, she weighs like 19 pounds. She's a tank. The lactation consultant was like, this is amazing. Oh my God. Like, she couldn't believe it. So I was like, Molly and I are partying. So that was helpful, and she was like, okay, so this is your job, why don't you let's start with just pumping 2 times a day. It seems like you produce so much. Start with 2, she'll eat 3 times, but if you just pump twice, I think you'll be able to produce enough. So I felt like that was really helpful, because she was like, I think if you try and do 3 times, you'll get frustrated, and you'll stop. So start with 2 and see how it goes. So that was really helpful, and had all that support, so I highly recommend that.
I've never thought about getting a lactation consultant before you go back to work. It's always like when you have a baby, you get a lactation consultant and have to figure out how to use your breast. But it's like, what about planning for particular moments in life?
Yeah.
It's like as lactation specialists, we're trained in not just those days and weeks after, but really extendedly until you decide to wean. And weaning can happen at any age that a parent and a child decides, you know. So you're talking about back to work, teething, sickness, all of those things. So the main question I think for back to work is how often do I have to pump? How do I know I'm going to have enough milk to pump? How much to store for my child? And I mean, it's great that you were able to get that resource.
Yeah. So that was helpful.
Yeah, it's a really good tip. I do forget often that it's not just set as an immediate need, which is there, but then you have this resource.
Yeah.
Even if you choose to extend breastfeeding, if you're practicing extended breastfeeding, you're nursing your 2-year-old. Yep. Like sometimes that's when you really need some help. I was
New
talking about that.
happen.
Yeah,
New things happen.
Yeah, new things happen, and to me, that I was just on this moment where I'm nursing my 2-year-old, and I have 3 children, and I'm at this point where I just want my body back, and that's how I know it was time for us to stop, because I hadn't had that feeling before. And so I think a tip about listening to yourself too. Yes. And I hope we can talk more about this. We were talking about it before, that this idea that like you don't have to stick to your plan. If it's not feeling like it's working. Yeah. I loved what you said before. If you want to share it again. Just about how we were talking before about how there's a mental piece that if it's not working, there's so much shame around everything.
So in my group, if you're not familiar with my group, I receive a lot of messages, a lot of anonymous messages from mothers around a particular topic. And a couple weeks ago, we were talking about rage, and sometimes that rage is directed at our children. And it's usually in like a really sleep-deprived, stressed out moments in motherhood. It's not like when we're feeling great. But it's in the middle of the night. It's when you've been trying to nurse your kid and they're rejecting your breast. Or, they're up for the 8th time and nothing you're doing is working. And I read, these confessions from many mothers who confessed to it. And then I threw my kid on the bed and I just, and it's things that are hard to read, but they're so real and they really happen. And I think sometimes they're a result of the pressure that people put on themselves, and sometimes the outside pressure to do something 112% and leaving no room for a shift or it's breastfeeding or not. It's like only breastfeeding and you can't have a bottle of Mom's milk, or it's only breastfeeding and you can't supplement with a little bit of formula, or maybe for you and your mental health, maybe breastfeeding needs to be more evaluated. And so I was talking to Jessica earlier about how I think that it's important to leave room for the plan to sometimes shift and to have a conversation about that if things are becoming a little bit too overwhelming.
I also, something that struck me when I was doing a little bit of reading about this topic and preparing for tonight is the number of women who, well, first of all, we're at a space in our history where women are the most educated they've been, throughout even contemporary times. And so you have this abundance of education and knowledge. And then, and then alongside that usually comes with some responsibility with your work. And so, but yet, I think the statistic is, and I don't want to get it wrong because it really floored me, was that it was, it's a good one, 43% of women leave the workforce after 3 months of being back to work. And the reason for that is directly related to their choice of nursing, because they're at a space where, like, you've now transitioned into this 5th trimester. As there's a great book called The 5th Trimester by a woman.
Just bought it like 3 days ago.
Great, Lauren Smith wrote it, and she's just like a real pioneer about this space because, again, it sort of colors this idea that, like, it's just another 3 months, just another transition, it's just another period of temporary time. So you're making choices, sort of heightened emotional choices in a really temporary moment that's having impact on your life, however many times down the line. And we know that the financial penalty, the motherhood penalty is real. We know that women are already making less than men in the same space. And we know that mothers and parents of color are making even less than that. And so we are not really doing the right things by our parents. And so as a practitioner, I'm often pushing my own agenda, which is, make the invisible visible. Like, I feel like it's your job, if you're up for the task, to be the woman who talks about her boobs at work. To be the woman who's like really excited to take maternity leave, or like to be the woman who's like, I'm so psyched to be back at work. And whatever that person is, like, if you're up for it, you need to do that for all the people who don't have that opportunity. Because as we know, another statistic is that 25% of women are going back to work within 2 weeks of having a baby, which is a crazy thing. I mean, your baby's 4 weeks old, 5 weeks old. Imagine, and
3 weeks ago.
3 weeks ago, and like, you know what?
Without.
Yeah.
I mean, look, he's like
And
so
some people-
reliant.
He's still getting to know the outside world. I mean, and then there's this other side, and I want Alexis to share this story, is that, that might be the right choice for someone. Someone might need to be back at work after 2 weeks.
Yeah, there was a woman that wrote in a while ago about how she was on maternity leave, but this amazing opportunity came up where she was offered this, like, the project of a lifetime at her job, but it would require her cutting her maternity leave short. She would have to go back a couple days a week, and she just didn't know what to do. She really wanted this project. She thought it would be a great way to kind of like stick it to the man and show like all the guys at work that like she can do this even while being a mom and like a brand new mom and not really have to pay that motherhood penalty. On the other hand, she remembered that voice that was like, you'll never get this time back. Like years from now, work won't remember you, but your family will always be there. And so she had this debate, an anonymous debate in the mom group, where people were like, well, if you think you can do it, you should do it, or like say yes until you have to say no. And in the end, it really felt for her like she was leaning towards, I want to do this. Like this is really where my heart is. And I think that the biggest point that the whole group walked away with this conversation was like, when you do it, when you go there, make your motherhood known. While you're kicking ass and while you're proving to the mom that you can do this, don't hide the fact that you're a mother. Let them know the sacrifice that you're making in being there. Like, kick ass, do your thing, get this project done, but let them know what you're giving up in order to do it. And make it visible. Make the motherhood stuff that you're leaving at home visible to them. But for her, that choice, she knew in her heart what she wanted to do was to take on this project.
And I think that's a good point too. And I would love your thoughts on that kind of situation where you're at that point, if she's a nursing parent, she's still establishing supply. And how could we navigate that? One tip, 2 tips about like making that transition easier.
Yeah, so for a nursing parent that is going back to work earlier than others, usually it takes about the first 6 weeks of a baby's life to establish your milk supply. So whatever you do in those first 6 weeks, whether nursing on demand, a little bit of nursing, a little bit of pumping to secure the supply, that 6 weeks will basically lay the foundation for however much milk you'll have for however long you decide to nurse for. And unfortunately, it's much easier for it to go down to come back up. So it's really important if choosing to go back to work that early or even prior to 6 weeks. I would say honestly through that first trimester, the first 3 months, your goal for either nursing or pumping is reaching at least 8 times a day. If you could do 9 or 10, it's better, but at least 8 times a day of stimulation and drainage. And then power pumping is a great tool in order to also increase supply and just store a little bit of your stash. And that's like watching your favorite show and during every commercial break you're pumping. right? So you're just keeping your pump parts and pump pieces right there, and you're nursing for that hour of your favorite show, and during the breaks, pumping, or you're doing 20 minutes on, 10 minutes off, 10 minutes on, 10 minutes off, 10 minutes on, adding up to 60 minutes in order to just let the body know, hey, I'm feeding a baby, make that milk. And so what I find that's also a great way that not only before going back to work to help supply, but also once back to work to keep maintaining that supply. And then, of course, nursing on demand when with the baby.
And I wasn't ever thought through. It's really about the activity on the breast.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Right?
yeah. So that doesn't mean baby, baby. It can be pump,
Right.
but it's just like you have to remove milk to make it. So.
I remember just sitting and doing work at night with the pump strapped to me, and I would just forget that I had the pump strapped to me, and I would just be answering emails or writing something, and then my husband would be like, you're just eking out. I was like, that's cool. Oh, yeah, it's been 45 minutes. But then the next day I'd have a really good supply. So I guess it worked. I didn't know that's what it was called. I just got lazy. I didn't want to take it on. I was like, that's good. Let's do it.
I feel like it's a good transition because what we get to see tonight is how this really cool hands-free pumping bra works. All about it, right? We're talking about efficiency.
Yeah, well, but before we really kind of introduce what this is, do you mind talking a little bit about the difference between a pump and a baby nursing and the efficiency and the output? Because I feel like a lot of moms also go into pumping expecting to get the exact same amount of ounces, and then they're really shocked and disappointed to find out that the pump is just not as efficient.
Yeah, definitely. So the pump will never get out what the baby is able to nurse out of your breast. So ideally a baby with a deep latch, efficient, no tongue ties or oral tether tissue will drain your breast more than what the pump will. There's also some people who just don't respond to a machine. A baby's latch and the way the baby suction is definitely different from needle pressure and how the pump gets milk out, as well as skin to skin, oxytocin, all of those things, which the pump doesn't do, but the massaging can definitely help. So a lot of times, even when we're talking about pumping, we encourage parents to massage, to add a warm compress and those things to help with hormones and help when those milk cuts up. So ideally, when you have those other factors in with the pump, it does help to reduce a little bit.
Right. So we invented the product. Basically, our CEO Adriana is. We invented this. It's called the Lilu massage bra, but it really came about when Adriana and our other co-founder Sujay were just looking for a solution to this problem, which was moms going back to work, and Adriana actually witnessing some of her coworkers returning after maternity leave and having meltdowns and going through so much stress. And so really as a project, they just asked a few moms in Philly if they could sit and watch them pump, just to how can we help, how can we build technology. They come from a product design and an engineering background, so they're well, how can we create technology to help moms, because it's really been a space that's been ignored by technology. I mean, the amount of innovation that's happened in this space has been minuscule for the last 30 years. So they were how can we fix this, how can we change this? And one of the things that they observed over and over again was these moms sitting there pumping, and then they're tweaking their boobs this way and that. He told me that I should be massaging, or this is where my duct is, and it's or I'm getting a clog, and then it's well, not only is pumping consuming your time, you have to go sit in a dark room somewhere in your office, or if you even have your own office, or as you were saying, in the dog food closet, and so you're already feeling isolated, and then on top of it, especially when you're at work, you're feeling like you're not, if you're having a massage, you're stressed and you're not being able to do anything else during that time. So with that, what they got to work on, which we just launched yesterday, is the Lilu massage bra. So it actually has built-in air compression component that actually mimics the motions that lactation experts recommend to really hit those ducts while you're help than if they hadn't massaged at all, and and it also just has given moms freedom, even just like if you're pumping and you want to play with your baby, or you don't want to feel super isolated. Even one mom's like, the fact that I can scroll Instagram instead of massaging makes the time go by so much faster.
Yeah.
So.
Something I really like Candy Crush still, or really, or like even if we're talking about like productivity, like that you can still like write an email or be on a conference call, at some point, and like be doing two things at once. I'm so excited to share this with people because I think how much less stress would this bring someone who might be really struggling. That's really I think through. I would love to hear from you guys. Like coming here tonight, what were some expectations, and if we can answer any questions that you're thinking about. I just really like the way you're sweet.
Like who's doing the headbutting thing?
Oh, cute.
And if anyone has questions on our Instagram stream.
Oh, that's right. I keep forgetting there are questions. Yeah, that's right.
I'll tell you.
Okay.
People have been waving.
I just want to look at his head. It's so cute, that little blonde. And this is your first?
Yes.
Yeah. And when you do?
October 4th.
Okay.
It's a good
Home
day.
stretch.
That's what I said. It's a good day.
It's my mother-in-law's birthday, so she's very happy.
Okay. Actually, have it on the back. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good thing.
Sooner than
I know.
And depending on your relationship with her. Give her that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
she's
And
always doing
I know, I realized that after I said it. MLI. Do you, and you said you were planning on returning to work.
Yeah. So I actually run my own company also.
cool.
And it's interesting because, figuring out maternity leave in that circumstance is tough.
Yeah.
So this is obviously the first time for me, but I've also overseen a lot of staff come back. And so I don't know, I was just thinking about that too, like your statistic about 43% leaving. I mean, we haven't had anyone leave after they came back, but it has, like, it's bumping. And it's like we're a remote company and like their hours are flexible and they can pump however and whenever they want and that stuff, but it's still really hard.
And again, it's back to like the plan and the expectation. Like it can go. I mean, that in the statistics, we don't know how much of it is a different choice versus like, there's also this really high incidence of where we feel really emboldened to make that invisible visible, and then that's held against you. And there's a really high statistic of people that are asked to leave their job because they have made this choice to have a family. But you also bring up a really good point about sort of negotiating time and like what time can look like, because it doesn't have to be within. You can be really productive on off hours. If your industry allows that. Clearly that's a different space. You're
gotta be
in
in the
something. You're like, I really wish I could. But that is a really, really wonderful tool for transition too. Is the knowing that like there are workarounds. You can be productive.
Yeah.
On off
It's
hours.
hard though too because like we've had a lot of staff who've tried, like basically we had to make this company policy, which is that you can't be the primary caregiver when you're working, because we would have a lot of people try to do both, and that is just like recipe for disaster for everything.
No,
like it was like really honestly for you, this is not a good idea.
No, and because you feel really split then, and then you're totally not productive.
Totally. Well, and just emotionally, it was like really hard for them. And I don't know. Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting to like figure out how much structure is the right amount of structure. Because I do think like complete flexibility is actually not always good when people are coming back. Because I think they kind of spin out a little bit. In my observation.
No,
I don't know how it will, but it's complicated. But yeah, so as the business owner, like I'm gonna take 2 months, but I don't feel like I can take more than that. Like realistically, and I'm not gonna go back full time after 2 months, but like I just might, you know.
Yeah, it falls on you a bit more than
Yeah.
everybody else, right?
But it's also funny because like I did also have to, you know, like the communicating it to my team was complicated.
Right, because you're the person in charge versus like
And
having to
responsible.
ask for it,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like that's a totally different process.
Yeah, and it's like, and understandably they were kind of like, what's gonna happen?
Right.
You know, like,
That's they're untethered too.
Yeah,
Where's
exactly.
mom?
Yeah.
She's momming someone else. That's a really interesting point.
Yeah. But they were also teasing me one day that they were going to shut off my access to my email and like change all my passwords, and I totally had this moment where I was like, they could actually do it. They were really stressed out. I know. It's scary.
Because we do thrive on that. Like that's I mean, a lot of this is identity shifts too, and so you know, and I think especially in New York, like we're successful type A, alpha, yeah, and there's real pride like that, and I feel proud of you for that, and like it's so hard to take that away and feel like being at home with a 5-week-old is at all productive or interesting. You know, some people get real joy out of that. You know, some people are okay. They're luxuriating in that time, and but more often than not, I feel like the people I know find it really challenging.
Yeah.
And so the prospect of going back to work is often really, really relieving. And I think that there's shame around that too. I feel like you probably have really good stories about that.
Yeah, it's probably like one of the most heated. There's 3 things we never can get like everyone in agreement on at the same time. It's like breastfeeding versus not breastfeeding. It's not like birthing laboring at home or laboring in the hospital, and then it's going back to work or staying. But I think the most divisive thing is going. You're like, I want to see that. Going back to work and staying at home is. It's like you can start like World War II about that because like people will start off with saying like not to say anything against people who go back to work, but and then the other camp will be like not to say anything against stay-at-home moms, but and it's really hard. But one of the great things about community is like you will find your people. So if we are talking about staying at home, you'll find hundreds of people who will say, "But here is all the joy that I get out of staying at home, and here are the hard parts. Here are the things that I struggle with. I still choose to stay at home, and sometimes I wonder what it would be like to go back to work, but I know myself. And I know that right now, the choice I'm making to be with my kids is the right choice for me. And then I'll think about it when, you know, and then the people who are at work are like, I don't have a choice. Some people are like, I don't have a choice, I have to be at work, and I have to be okay with that. And other people are like, I just know that this is the right choice for me, but I do feel guilty. And then we talk through that. And I think that we just have to support each other in where we are at now, and the choices that we're making now.
How do you prepare if you don't know what, like, if you have the option to and to not do? Like, what if you are just like, I don't know if I want to go back to work or not, and I'm just going to play it? Like, can you play it? Can you even play it by ear? Because there is so much from, like, a lactation perspective also, you know, these are my goals. And then, like you said, then you're like, oh, maybe I started out thinking I wasn't going to go back to work, and so my tribe is here, and then now I'm going back to work, so am I going to lose my tribe? And then you have all of these, like layers of complication.
Well, I was saying before is that when you are on maternity leave, you tend to meet a lot of other moms, and then you use wonderful friendships, and you kind of create this little village for yourself, and then you go back to work, and then you lose that village. You're not seeing them every day in the park or having that mom group meeting, and then you're at work and you feel a little untethered because you don't have those people around you anymore. That's what you're saying, like the loss of that tribe. But what I've heard a lot of women decide to do is they plan on going back to work and quit it. Like they plan on quitting after maternity. They plan on it.
Right. Yeah.
So they're like, well, I'm gonna. But they could be like open to, well, maybe I will stay.
Yeah.
But if you say like I'm gonna quit once I get there, and that leaves it open to like, but maybe you'll like it. Yeah. Maybe you'll stay. topics to consider.
Yeah.
Too keen on that.
Right. But I also think that's a good point too, is that, I think a lot of what we're talking about is people that have choices in this space. And there's and there's so many who don't have the
And like
choice.
in New York City, I mean, I guess childcare is so expensive that for some people it might just be easier not to work.
100%.
But it's like the amount of money you have to make just to like live in a kind of crappy apartment
Right.
is so astronomical that it's like it's I don't know how people don't go back to work.
And I think, But I think sometimes on paper you're looking at the exchange and it's this like my input is as much as I'm putting out for care sometimes.
Right.
And it's just me leaving the space that's allowing this other thing to happen.
Right.
And so, financially,
Is it worth
it
the
might
extra
be-
$10,000
it might
a
not
year
be.
to-
And it might not even be that much, which is the crazy thing too. And so, I think you find yourself in this sort of gig economy sphere, and you find a lot of people who are, that's why I ended up doing this work, because I could make my own time and hours, and I'm super, super fortunate to do that. But there's a huge population of people that don't have that opportunity. And I sort of segued this way because I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about that it's National Black Breastfeeding Week. And we talk about, we talk about statistics for anything when it comes to nursing, when it comes to birth support and, maternal outcomes in birth. And also, like, when you talk about perinatal mood or anxiety disorders, you have the average is 1 in 5 women will experience a diagnosable perinatal mood or anxiety disorder. You have 1 in 3, parent of color experiencing that. You have, I think the statistic is like, of that 25% of people having a mood disorder experience, you have 17% of them being diagnosed, and then only 5% of those people being treated. And so you have this like domino effect, and you kind of conflate all the things of like hormonal changes with nursing, the going back to work at a time when you're still regulating physiologically, and then you throw on the fact that like, and I want you to talk about this, it's important that we know the statistics, and how we can better like I think by serving, parents of color in this place, you're serving everybody,
I think what's interesting is like people think of back to work as, I'm gonna give birth, baby's gonna latch, everything's gonna be smooth, and in 6 to 8 weeks or whatever I'm gonna go. And we don't give room for what the birth is gonna look like, for the emotional shifts, for the changing in your relationship, what finding childcare might look like. And as persons of color, we're already walking into the birth community where we might have already had a cesarean, higher induction rates, complications, more aggressive medicine, lower breastfeeding rates, and support, because we leave these hospitals and birthing facilities with, unfortunately, LC's kind of like, black and brown people don't nurse, so why am I going to support them, right? And so for us, it's a constant struggle of finding our community, finding where do we look for support, where do we look for our peers, right? Where do we find another person of color that's also breastfeeding and had a positive birth experience to be like, yeah, you're doing great, everything is good. So there's not enough room in that context for much. And then when we talk about the needs of our own family, right? When we talk about the financial needs, like you said, it is like, for some people it is like, I'm just giving my paycheck to someone else to watch my child, right? And for some others, it's like, it's my mental health to leave the house, to get out of the house, even if I'm giving my paycheck, right? And then also another layer of that is, I also don't think we honor the roles that, even though we might be like 2019 gender equality, right? For many people, when they leave the home, they're still navigating what they have to come home to, right? And depending on circumstances, where you live, what that environment looks like, it might be I'm managing, who's doing laundry, who's cooking dinner, who's washing dishes. I still have paperwork to do, all of those things as well. So usually for one person in the relationship than the other, there's a little bit more, like it's a little bit off balance, off kilter. And then with Black breastfeeding and just the awareness we need to bring to it, I think there definitely in the workplace is certain biases already put on us, unfortunately. So even if it's standing up for wanting to calm, I want to nurse extendedly, I want my job to support that. there's definitely backlash that comes from that, and even expressing that, and now we're the difficult employee, right? So there's already stigmas being thrown in there as well. And I mean, I am fortunate to also be a doula and flexible, and I'm nursing a 17-month-old now, but those were also conscious decisions after my first, who's now 7, to be like, this is what works for me, and these are the changes I'm going to do to achieve that, and that's not everyone's story by far. You know, we're not only talking about long hours at work, but we're talking about places that don't even provide a pump space, right? No, like obvious and bathrooms don't count, right? You know? So it's a little bit more than what we think, and we're not having these hard conversations. We're not sharing this conversation with people before, you know? Even if we encourage people to have these conversations with their bosses, I think everyone's a little bit timid and like, oh, it's not the right time to do that, you know, I don't want to rub anybody the wrong way, and it always just feels like we're choosing one or the other. There's never a way to like successfully do both.
That's a lot of that. I think there's a couple things we wanted to also bring up is the mental health aspect, which is that I don't think people think about the postpartum depression aspect and mood disorders that could happen postpartum. They don't factor that into the going back to work.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure, how that affects
Journey.
Right.
Because how do you go back to work that you've been like ravaged, your body's like full of scars and wounds and all this stuff, and on top of it, not scary.
No, I've had staff who struggle with it. Yeah.
And then you are coping with this could be like a latent postpartum or anxiety disorder or whatever it is. It's something that maybe you didn't address yet, and you're just discovering it, and now you're going back to work, and so you have this confluence of issues, and you're thrust into a now stressful environment. And I think that it would be very proactive to, in advance, as part of your birth plan, think about the possibility that you might need to have, think about, okay, well, this does happen to me. Who's going to be my support system? Where there's like any mental health professionals or any support groups. Do I know a reproductive psychiatrist? Because that's important. Like, all of a sudden you're diagnosed and you need to go on medication. Can you go on it? Who's going to
breastfeeding friendly, which many people don't know.
And many providers, medical providers, and many psychiatrists, even not even non-reproductive psychiatrists, are not comfortable addressing the medication piece. And so again, you're right. We live in a great space for that. There's so many resources at your fingertips here. And I think this with you can also be the gateway for friends, being able to recognize it in friends and feeling like peeling back the stigma of saying, even if it doesn't happen to you, you can provide that support for people around you. Because we all know somebody in this room, you know me now, and you know anxiety.
And just because you've never had a history doesn't mean that you're not going to have it. You maybe had a kid before doesn't mean you're not going to have it. I had it the second time around and presented as anxiety and not depression. And I think even as first-time parents, we're kind of like, I'm going to worry about something, it's been around like a figure at some point it's not the case. And the same way you set up so much for the birth, set up for the postpartum. I think many people at 2 a.m. were like, oh crap, and that's not the time to be like, oh crap, and not know this. So even if you're never going to call that psychiatrist or know that support, you have it. I think it's so important. Absolutely.
And it can happen at 12 months. It's not just like week 5 and suddenly things are not going the way we expected.
Postpartum is not just that 6-week chunk. That's like, okay, you go through different steps. And another thing about back to work to remember is there's going to be another shift in your hormones that ends up with that when you get your period back, or when those hormones shift because you're not nursing as much. That everyone reacts differently to those things, and you just don't know. People say they experience depression when weaning because the hormones are so different. So imagine not nursing your baby possibly on demand and longer gaps in between those oxytocin highs and what that could possibly look like.
Absolutely. I want to keep talking about this. It's a really important subject to me, but we have a couple minutes left, and I want to make sure if anybody out there wanted to ask a question, or if any of you wanted to add something or ask any more questions that we have time to answer.
I
I've talked to my therapist about it because my mom experienced very severe postpartum depression. But basically, also giving the reins to your partner, to somebody who knows what you look like when you're down and knows to recognize it. Because I think for me, I knew that something we did like early when we found out that I was pregnant was I gave him the information of my therapist. I gave him, just so he would have self-control. Because he can recognize if something is not right. Because sometimes I feel like we know something is wrong, and we're just gonna try to toughen it up, oh, you're hysterical, you're making a big deal out of nothing, you're just hormonal, blah blah blah. And no, it's legitimate emotions. You're going through a hard time. It's okay to ask for help, but your body will lie to you.
And your brain will lie to you too.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm in recovery, and I know all the time when I'm having a bad day, I would love to have a drink, and I can't. And sometimes my brain will tell me, oh, you're not an alcoholic. You can totally handle one drink. I've never had a single drink in my life. So just knowing that my body is very capable, and my brain is very capable in being deceiving, and just giving the reins to somebody else, and that's, I think, a tool that was very helpful for other things.
That's a really, I love that story. Like, that's such a really good thing. I want to carry that with you.
It's like you have to be able to tap out and know that you can confidently trust the baby. Be like, babe, there's a baby for 5 minutes, I need to walk around the block, or I'm going to go take a shower.
Like, my husband a few days ago was like, okay, I'm getting this in for the baby, would you mind? And then I got up and I took care of it.
Know the true emotion with your conversation. Like, even when I get on the postpartum dual side of things, I talk to people about, like, think about how you left him at, how you communicate, and how really you're going to change that, and what that might look like, and how you feel like that. So, yeah, sometimes those hard conversations, like, you don't know how to navigate those hard conversations, so
Well, thank you all so much for coming tonight. I'm sad that we have to close this down, so we were just getting into it. But we do have some treats on the chairs, and also in the back, we also had totem lactation treats. You should take a bag. Everyone that's here should take a bag. It's a mix, so you make the cookies yourself. They're so delicious. There's also some pre-made back there, which you should take with you. Maybe if you know it's pump right away. Pre-made mix in the back with you. It's just like a thank you for being here and to be part of the discussion.
Great, thank you.
And everyone following online, just so everyone knows where to find everyone.
Yes, please.
It's at Not Safe for Mom Group.
Yep.
Right, on Instagram, and it's at Afterthird.
At Afterthird.
Do you have a personal or
At _momtown_.
and
at YPMandula, WOMBN.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Max.